During the afternoon of August 18th, 1862, reports of attacks by Dakota Indians filtered into New Ulm, and refugees came streaming into town. Its citizens, organized under the command of Jacob Nix, began to throw up a barricade around the central part of town, using wagons, barrels, logs, even furniture. They had only 50 guns in town, and many of those were old and rarely used. Throughout the following evening, the work on the barricades continued. It began on Center Street and then ended on 3rd North, extending 1/2 block in either direction from Minnesota Street. There were 2 sides to those barricades. On one side, the inside, stood Friedrich Kiesling. His journey to New Ulm began in Germany in 1860. What led him to leave that life behind and travel a quarter of the way around the globe to find a new home? One reason might have been the political turmoil in Germany. Kiesling came from Saxony, where revolutionaries took to the streets of Dresden in 1848, demanding democratic reforms. It led to open conflict as barricades were erected to halt the advance of the king's troops. So perhaps Friedrich Kiesling sought to escape by traveling across the ocean to America. Another reason might have been the ties of family. His 2 brothers had come to America a decade earlier, settling in Chicago. When mob violence there was directed at German immigrants, the Chicago Land Company organized a colony to find a quiet place on the frontier to live. In 1861, with a growing family, Friedrich Kiesling built this house behind his blacksmith shop on Minnesota Street. And now it was under attack, and the barricade ran right behind his house. On the other side of the barricade, the outside, stood Wamditanka, a Dakota Indian known as Jerome Big Eagle to white settlers. He was 35 years old in 1862 and living with his band near the Redwood Agency where they tried farming. But what led him to risk his life to join an attack that he believed would fail? Years later, he talked about the forced changes that were eroding the life of his family and his band. He said, "The whites were always trying to make the Indians give up their life and live like white men. And the Indians did not know how to do that, and did not want it anyway. It seemed too sudden to make such a change. Then the Indians did not think the traders had done right. Many of the whites always seemed to say by their manner when they saw an Indian, 'I am much better than you.' And the Indians did not like this. And so he threw his lot with those who chose a desperate attack at New Ulm. When that attack failed, Big Eagle's road took him away from New Ulm, at first northwest along the Minnesota River, then following his surrender to a trial in Mankato, where he was found guilty and given a death sentence. And then, following a commutation by President Lincoln, he was taken to a prison in Davenport, Iowa. After a pardon, he moved with his band to the Santee Reservation in Nebraska. But in the spring of 1869, Big Eagle moved back to Minnesota and spent the last years of his life near Granite Falls. He died in 1906. Friedrich Kiesling, on the other hand, never traveled far. He lived in this house on Minnesota Street for another 35 years and died at the ripe old age of 83 in 1912.